Welcome, my name is Colleen Tauke and I'm the sewing specialist here at Fons & Porter. In this Quilting Quickly tutorial, I'm going to show you how to put together the rows in the quilt called Stringing Beads. You can see behind me. If you'd like to purchase this pattern, please visit our website. We're going to be using 5-inch pre-cut squares, and you can see the array of colors here. And I've pulled out a white here, but the quilt behind me reads a little more on the cream side, but for contrast we're going to be using the white. And we're going to be creating this quilt in vertical rows. Instead, a lot of times we'll put together blocks, patchwork blocks, and make horizontal rows, but in this quilt everything's done vertically. So it takes a little bit of a different step if you haven't worked with 1/2 and 1/4 square triangles before. So let us begin. From our background fabric, we're going to be cutting the designated squares. Go according to your pattern for the dimensions on this. You have large squares, some smaller squares, and you're going to be cutting some rectangles. Now the rectangles, you'll cut those and set those aside. We're going to work with our squares here at the beginning, and what we need to do is to cut, and you can see I've put lines across here so that you can see where we're going to be marking. We need to create triangles that have straight of grain in different locations. So what we're going to do from the large square is going to cut diagonally in both directions, and those are going to be used to create our side pieces in each of our rows. And because of the direction we're cutting, we have our straight of grain on what we call the long leg of the triangle. Show you that in a minute here. Now we have this cut corner to corner, and as I bring those apart, you'll see that that makes the 4 triangles. Now the straight of grain is in the outer edge of our the longest leg of our triangle, fairly stable. If we were to pull on these on the short legs, you'll find there's a lot of stretch on both of those. We want those to be the interior of our long rows. We want the stability of that straight of grain. So we're going to be cutting quite a few of those for our quilt, and those are called the A triangles. And then we're going to be using squares that are then cut once, corner to corner, and that will create the bias going that long leg. So they're very different kinds of triangles. The stretch is in a different place. You'll see here the stretch is now here on that long leg. The stability is in the outer, shorter legs. We're going to be using those as B triangles. Okay, we have some extras. Now I'm going to lay out the rows, the vertical row, so you understand how this is put together. We've got, I'll start with one here. All those 5-inch squares you don't have to do anything with. That's the fun part of this. The pre-cuts, you get to get into the design process right away. So we're going to use a square like this. Then we're going to be using 2 small triangles. This is the top of the row. Then we're going to be using those larger ones that we cut, and I'll grab another here and slide it in there. And you can start to see that a vertical row is starting to appear. This is a diagonally set rows that you're going to be joining, but you're going to create these long skinny rows as columns through your quilt. Now you'll see that in the quilt they aren't exactly lined up square from one row to the next. There's a shift. So that means that you're going to use those rectangles that we cut and set aside so that you put a spacer at the top of the first row. Then you're going to come in, and I've got a partial row here for the second row started already. And, whoops, turn it the right direction. Here we go. And you'll want to probably mix up your colors a little bit more than having the two turquoise ones right next to each other. But you'll see that it starts to create an offset, and this is what the bottom of the row would look like. Imagine that the column is longer. But you can see that that creates this white kind of a zigzag strike down between the rows. And what we need to do then is talk about the construction of those rows. Now that I have the idea of how they're offset, so we can see the overall effect. What we're going to be doing is placing triangle on top of the square. We want to find the center. So it's a simple little pinch to put just kind of a little pleat in there or a little dent in the fabric so we can tell where centers are. Match those up, right sides together, and seam along. And I've got one that's partially done here. We've got this one seamed in place, so you can see the 1/4 inch seam, press it out. Then you're taking the triangle on the other end. Let's move these out here quick. The triangle that you're putting on the other side for this short little row, you align here, the right angle, seam it, and press your seam allowance out. This triangle can be put on now, or it can be put on when the whole row is, the whole column is assembled already. But what I want to show you is putting on the next little short diagonal row. It has 2 large triangles. Follow the diagram in your pattern and it'll show you which of the triangles to use. You can see here the right angles aligned, seamed and pressed. And on the opposite side then, this one is seamed in place and pressed out. Now when you go to join these rows together, you're going to have that little locking spot right here. Right sides together. I'll flip it so that the camera can pick up. You can see that because you pressed your seam allowances towards the white, you've got opposing seams here, and you would then take this under the machine, lay it out flat, and you would stitch from here all the way through. And you can see on the ends, the little dog ears are in place. It creates a V on both ends. That's where your 1/4 inch should start and end in that seam to put that together. And then you would have your second row added. And you just continue in that same manner, making your columns and finish with the small triangles at the bottom. And when you're all done putting together your columns, you're going to want to pin the rows together so that they don't stretch, because this is a long seam across. So you're going to match top and bottom of each of the columns you've created, and then pin the center and then join the rows together. It has a small inner border of cream so that the stringing beads kind of float on the quilt. Then an outer border, and finish with a fun red binding. And you've created your quilt. If you'd like to see more of our video tutorials, please visit our website. Thanks for joining me today.